Welcome to NDTV's pre-budget special, The Budget of Hope. We are counting down to Finance Minister's budget presentation on the 23rd of this month. And on this show, we look at personal tax and what are the expectations of the salaried segment of taxpayers. Will your tax burden increase or will you get tax relief? We will explore the key expectations and concerns of salaried individuals regarding potential tax reforms and break it down for our viewers in the simplest non-jargonish format. Our panel of experts will provide an analysis on what changes might be in the horizon and what are the key demands of people regarding personal tax. Joining me on the show will be Ashish Killa, Director of the Perfect Group, Himanshu Parekh, Partner, Tax, KPMG in India, Abhay Chandalia Jain, Managing Director of HRA Exemption Limited, and Alok Agarwal, Partner in Deloitte, India. But before I go across to my panel of experts, let's listen into what people on the ground are actually demanding. We have curated a number of voices of the salaried middle class and what their expectations are from this budget in terms of personal tax. Listen into some voices coming in from the national capital.
What are your expectations from the upcoming budget with respect to personal tax?
What we are looking for is that there should be a relief for the middle class, primarily because the taxation as of now is pretty high, and this particular class is the most taxed class, the low middle and the middle. I feel that we need to have some sort of relief in this so that these people can have some more expenditure and savings also. Thank you.
In which field do you work in?
I'm a banker.
All right, great. So, ma'am, with respect to the upcoming budget, personal tax से आपकी क्या expectations हैं?
इसमें ऐसे लगता टैक्स सैलरीड के लिए अप टू 15 लाख तक है ना टैक्स रिबेट होनी चाहिए, और ये इसमें ये भी बोल रहे हैं जैसे हाउसिंग लोन ये लेते हैं हम, तो उसमें भी टैक्स डिडक्ट होता है, उसमें भी बोल रहे हैं कि इंटरेस्ट वाला वो नए न्यू स्लैब में जो आया है कि जो इंटरेस्ट इनकम पे जो हमें वो रिबेट मिलती है वो भी हमें मिलनी चाहिए, और मतलब वो बंद नहीं करनी चाहिए। वो बोल रहे हैं बंद हो जाएगी, इंटरेस्ट इनकम पे जो रिबेट मिलती है वो बंद हो जाएगी न्यू स्लैब में, न्यू टैक्स राइम में, तो वो नहीं होनी चाहिए।
आप किस फील्ड में काम करती हैं?
मैं इंजीनियर हूँ एक, और मैं पावर डिपार्टमेंट में काम करती हूँ, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी डिपार्टमेंट में, और यही उम्मीद है कि आने वाले बजट में टैक्स में कुछ हमें मतलब जो हम टैक्स पे कर रहे हैं उसमें कुछ रिडक्शन मिले डेफिनेटली, एंड जो स्लैब्स हैं वो थोड़े एक्सपैंड किए जाएं, जो हमें एग्जेम्पशन मिलता है, यही उम्मीद है एक।
So, personal tax relief, how much do you expect, or is it going fine now as it has been?
The limit for 2.5 at least it should be increased, and people who are in 30% slab or above, they will be getting relief if we can increase this at least 80 part.
Expectations from the upcoming budget, as they did not get much tax relief in the interim budget of 2024. Will the finance minister offer income tax relief to the salaried class on July 23rd, or will the taxpayers need to adjust their old-time favorite expectations? Questions that will be answered on the union budget on July 23rd.
Right, let me go across to my panelists now and I'll introduce them once again. Ashish Killa, Director of the Perfect Group, Himanshu Parekh, Partner, Tax, KPMG in India, Abhay Chandalia Jain, Managing Director of HRA Exemption Limited, and Alok Agarwal, Partner, Deloitte, India. Thank you to all of you for joining me on the show. First question to Ashish Killa. Considering this is Modi government facing coalition compulsions for the first time, can we expect any major tax relief in this budget?
So I think just to give you a background, I think the government, even the Revenue Secretary has made it very clear that they want to move to a simplified tax regime. And the benefit which the government and the coalition setup might want to give to the rural household or to rural folk would be more in terms of schemes and welfare schemes targeted towards helping out the poor people, helping out the lower middle class. But in terms of tax regime, if you see in the past few years also, they have tried to make the new tax regime more and more attractive by tinkering with the threshold limits, by allowing standard deduction. So what we expect is that the government will again maybe try to make it more lucrative in terms of improving the threshold limit for standard deduction or tax slabs, but rather than tinkering with the old tax regime. And the benefit would be to poor people would be given via more welfare schemes and other objectives of the government.
Right. Himanshu Parekh, coming to you now, do you actually see a probability of tax slabs increasing or a tax rate rejig? Because we've not seen a tax rate hike for several years now. So considering that background, do you see that in this budget, there will be a distinct difference this time around compared to what we saw in the interim one?
Clearly, that is a key expectation of the masses from this budget. Having said which, what we need to appreciate is that if you look at the old tax regime, while the basic exemption slab is only 2.5 lakhs, and under the new regime, the basic exemption slab is 3 lakhs. The matter of fact is that under the old regime, if you take into account the rebate which is available to taxpayers, plus the deduction under section 80C, plus the standard deduction of 50,000 rupees, then taxpayers earning up to 7 lakh rupees don't pay any income tax. Similarly, under the new regime, having regard to the tax rebate which is available up to 7 lakhs, plus the standard deduction up to 50,000 rupees, for taxpayers earning up to 7.5 lakhs, they don't pay any income tax at all. Now, obviously, there are expectations that the slab rate should be further revised, there should be a further relaxation thereon, the rate of tax should be reduced, so on and so forth. And as Ashish said, I would like to believe that clearly the government's intention is to move to the new regime from the erstwhile regime, and therefore I would not expect any tinkering in terms of the deductions available to taxpayers, be it in the form of section 80C or any other deductions that were available to salaried taxpayers. What the government may try and do is make the new tax regime slightly more attractive so that they are able to leave little more cash in the hands of taxpayers and thereby spurring consumption in the economy.
Right.
But all in all, I don't expect too many changes on that front in this budget.
Okay, point taken. In fact, let me take that question, that point that Himanshu touched upon to Alok Agarwal. You know, this is one of the moot points which is coming across, and also we put that up in the graphics that we are carrying of the key expectations of taxpayers, that a lot of them have not migrated to the new tax regime because they still feel that they are able to save more under the old tax regime. So what exactly can the government do? If their attempt is to, do away with confusion, make it simpler for the taxpayer, that has not really been achieved by the new tax regime so far. So what exactly can the government do in this budget this time around in order to make the new tax regime more attractive for taxpayers?
Sure. So, I agree with the general comments that they will be looking to make the new tax regime more attractive, to get more and more taxpayers to shift from the old regime to the new regime. One of the reasons or intentions of the government under the new regime was to keep it simple without having to review and scrutinize claims for deductions and exemptions, let's say based on documentation, based on satisfaction of conditions, the scope for, let's say, tax avoidance that may have. So keeping that in mind, it is still possible for the government to sweeten the deal, if I may, under the new regime by introducing some deductions. A simple example could be, let's say, a deduction of 50,000 rupees that is available when an individual contributes to NPS, which is there under the old regime, and that is not under the new regime. Now, again, this government has been trying to incentivize the NPS scheme over the years, and that could be a simple way they could provide additional benefit under the new regime and at the same time achieve their objective of making the NPS more popular. Similarly, there could be a couple of other financial oriented deductions that they could provide under the new regime where they don't really need to scrutinize any claims because that data is very easily coming to the government and being captured in the AIS, TIS and other documents.
Right. Let me take the next question that I have to Abhay Chandalia Jain, Managing Director of Share Samadhan. There's also, besides all the other expectations that we have talked about, there's also a growing demand of expecting changes in the capital gains tax. Can the salaried segment expect their voice to be heard on that front from the finance minister this time around? And this is important for market buoyancy as well, that we've seen that there's been a lot of interest in how the market is doing of late. So is that a fair demand from the taxpayer side, which the government may heed this time?
Yes, you know that after paying all the taxes, we pay GST. After that, we pay the proper income tax, and whatever money is left over, we are investing in the capital market. And since the market is growing, everybody is earning. So the tax present structure is again, I will say it is on a higher side. Looking at the total market cap, which is more than the GDP of the country, with the total tax collection under capital gain will increase further. So I will suggest the government to bring some changes, whether increasing, whether it should be reduced. Earlier, the long-term capital gain was totally tax-free. So they put the taxes on that. So I request the government should bring down the capital gain taxes. It's not only the share market, on the real estate part also, the capital gain should be reduced. Recently, there was one event in Mumbai in which somebody has asked our honorable finance minister about that. How much money they are paying to the government as a taxes and how much money a share broker is earning. So share broker is earning out of the trading done by the shareholders or market traders itself. So you understand how much a person is paying the total tax if that person calculate. First, we are paying 18% GST. After that, we are paying almost 25 to 35%. It goes up to as high as 40% total taxes. So after paying total 58% taxes, and after that again on the investment made by us, we are bound to pay so much of capital gain tax. So I expect that it should come down.
Also, another moot point, in fact, let's get down to the brass tacks as to what people really want. They want to save more. So in terms of the tweaks, there's a demand for tweaking the section 80C, which has been last amended in 2015, on the basic exemption limits. Currently, it's capped at 1.5 lakh. Given the circumstances that we are, as I mentioned, that it is a coalition government this time around, and there's, of course, inflation that the government has to come to terms with. Ashish Killa, do you see there any chance of the basic exemption limits being rejigged?
See, the government, as you clearly mentioned in the beginning, has now the election result which coalition parties also will have. So clearly, I think tax increases is not to be expected in terms of helping out the economy, giving more purchasing power to the people. The rejig, which my other panelists also mentioned, will be to maintain, make it more attractive. So, for example, above 15 lakhs limit, we're charging 30%. And maybe there could be another slab where we say 15 to 20 lakhs is say 20%, and then beyond that we move up the tax rates. So if you see overall in the country, among the 140 crore population, not even 6 to 7% are paying income tax. So clearly the government also realizes by rationalizing the tax slabs, by making it more attractive, you will improve compliance. And also another better way to collect taxes is maybe indirect taxes, like a honeybee collecting honey from flowers and without pinching anybody else. So I think that is the way forward in terms of how you move towards an efficient tax collection system from everyone in the country.
Right. That also brings in the question whether there's a need for widening the tax net. That, of course, includes several other aspects and even political decisions that the government might have to consider. We'll slip into a short break at this point, but continue this very important conversation on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching NDTV's pre-budget special, where we are focusing on personal tax and what are some of the top expectations from people as far as personal tax is concerned. In fact, the shots playing on your screen right now is a meeting which was held just a few days back. Prime Minister Modi chaired this meeting where he met the top economists in order to have consultations as to what are some of the aspects that they can keep in mind ahead of the budget presentation on July 23rd. So those Finance Minister, of course, also part of that meeting along with several senior Finance Ministry officials. Before I continue with my conversation with our top panelists, let's also listen into what Mumbaikars have to say as far as their expectations from the budget is concerned, as far as personal tax is concerned in this budget.
What are your expectations from the upcoming budget? Sir, my major expectations for Mumbai as a citizen of Mumbai and Maharashtra in particular are that Mumbai has been paying lot of taxes to the government and they should get their fair share back because Mumbai as a growing city requires lots of facilities like infrastructure in light of lot of real estate development.
Do you agree with that sort of analysis that let's say if not just 10 years but last few years have specifically been slightly tougher for the middle class salaried individual as compared to how was the situation before?
Yeah, surely. If you look at this new tax regime that has been brought in by previous year, if you see that all the investments, all the exemption allowances has been wiped off, and it's more of the market-driven budget for the salaried individual rather than a public budget. So if I want to save, I have to save it on my own. And if you see in general Indian perception, if you'll see, the Indian public does not save on their own. They do if there is compliance to save some sort of taxes and all. And if the new regime, if you see, there are no exemption, no allowances as per se something there. So for sure, this will prove fatal for their future savings and retirements and also.
This individual salaried person, अगर आप देखोगे तो इंडिया में अराउंड 80 लाख सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियर्स हैं जो कि अच्छे खासे पैकेज पे वर्क करते हैं. तो उनके लिए जब इनकम टैक्स की बात होती है, बजट की बात होती है, तो उनके लिए गवर्नमेंट क्या कर रही है? क्योंकि जो भी आप कहीं भी ले लो, बेंगलोर, मुंबई, गुड़गांव, जहाँ भी जाओगे तो उनको अपनी फैमिली चलानी है, घर भी देखना है, खुद के भी सब काम होते हैं. तो उस लिहाज से देखें तो गवर्नमेंट से हम अपेक्षा करते हैं कि जो 80C में लिमिट गवर्नमेंट ने कर रखी है अभी लास्ट 10 ईयर से जो है वो 1.5 लाख सी है. सो हम सोचते हैं कि गवर्नमेंट इसको डबल करे या जितना भी करेगी तो उतना थोड़ा बोझ कम होगा.
Let me take my next question to Alok Agarwal. Alok, if we talk about HRA and the kind of break that people are expecting as far as HRA is concerned, should the government include tier 2 cities as well in the 50% HRA exemption limits? Because the list of metro cities is still limited to 4, which is quite ridiculous in today's time and age. So is that one of the key demands that you see emerging in all the surveys and studies that you have done ahead of the budget this time?
Yes, Tanima, that's right. In fact, it is one of the top requests from, especially from taxpayers in cities like Bengaluru, given that they have still to reconcile with the 40% rate as compared to the 50% rate, which is allowed in the metro cities of Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, and Kolkata. So from an HRA exemption perspective, they relatively get a smaller exemption. And as you have rightly pointed out, given the growth in cities like Bengaluru, given the cost of living increases, there is a very strong case for aligning that to the 50% rate which is available to the 4 metros. But having said that, we had discussed earlier that this government has not been looking at giving any additional reliefs under the old regime. So that remains the overriding concern, whether if that remains the thinking, then it may not be considered, even though there's a very strong case for that.
Right. So the focus might be more on improving on the new tax regime so they can slowly phase out the old tax regime instead of making more changes to the old one. So that is, of course, an aspect that needs to be looked at. But Himanshu Parekh, if we talk about women, we have heard the Prime Minister saying time and again that women, youth are key constituencies for the government. So in terms of tax benefits for women, what can the Finance Minister offer?
That's a very, very pertinent point that you raise, Tanima, and perhaps the government may in the budget introduce some special incentive for women, be it in the form of a higher slab rate or be it a higher standard deduction, or wherever women have houses in their own name, allowing them the deduction of higher interest on borrowed money for investing in houses, so on and so forth. That is quite a possible scenario and something which the government should certainly focus on. Tanima, there were a couple of other points that I had in my mind. Can I raise those topics as well?
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So the one thing that I wanted to talk about is this entire issue of taxation of ESOPs. Today, what happens is that ESOPs are taxed in the hands of a taxpayer upon exercise of the options and allotment of the shares. But at that point in time, the taxpayer does not receive any monetary consideration merely on exercise of ESOPs. And this results in a liquidity crunch for the taxpayers. Now, in the past, some representations were made to the government to this effect, and there was some relaxation which was introduced to say that for employees, who work with qualified startups, for them, post exercise of the ESOPs, they have the flexibility to pay tax over a period of 4 years. And I think it is high time that we extend this benefit to all the taxpayers, whether they work with qualified startups or not. That's the expectation of all the taxpayers who earn ESOPs from their employers. So that's one point I just wanted to bring it to your notice.
Right. And I hope the right quarters in the government are listening to all our experts on this show. And let me take in the last question. We have very less time left on the show, but the last question to Abhay Chandalia Jain. The cost of healthcare has in fact risen, but we have not seen commensurate increases in terms of deduction limits in medical insurance. So is that something that you feel that the government should look into, especially now that we're living in a post-COVID era?
Yes, definitely, because the cost of insurance has also gone up, number one. There are many people who do not take the Mediclaim policy also. So the government should, first of all, make more awareness about the health insurance to be taken, number one. Number two is, if due to any reason, because of ignorance of the law or ignorance of the financial literacy, etc. and all, they don't take the insurance, and one day they suffer and pay few hundreds or thousands or lakhs of rupee on the health treatment. So there should be some provision. Or in case somebody has not taken that policy, then there should be some provision that other person can take the Mediclaim medical benefit on production of the bill, or that can be also linked. Like now in AIR, and most of the information is coming up. In the same way, now everything is linked to Aadhaar, and Aadhaar is linked to ITR. So that expenses incurred on health can be taken benefit. Definitely, the Mediclaim deduction should also be increased, because need of the hour. Now everybody, one person policy you are taking is 25 lakh rupees may cost 30-40,000 rupees. And the moment age is become more and you are becoming senior citizen, the total cost may go to even 1 lakh rupees also.
Right. Okay. So before I wrap the show, I just want 30-second responses from all of you in terms of your final thoughts on what should be the top priority for the government this time around when they are looking at personal tax, if any rejig is on the cards. First, starting with Ashish first.
So 30-second quickly, rationalize the tax slabs, raise the initial exemption limits, improve the sun deduction, and make the new tax structure more tax friendly, so that more people, the majority is still for old, so that they can move to the new tax regime, make it more attractive.
Okay, Himanshu?
Make the new tax regime more friendly and ease tax compliances for taxpayers.
Okay. Abhay?
Make one India, one tax, one payment, one return, nothing more.
Okay. And
so for an entrepreneur, it becomes a 1 point responsibility that they have to pay that much. Based on the turnover, it can be linked. So many compliances should be done.
Right.
Compliances are very costly.
A more simpler tax slab for that matter. Alok Agarwal.
If I have to just choose one request, then I would request that the tax slabs and things like the standard deduction should be aligned at least to the inflation rate, so that they keep going up as per the inflation and people don't lose out.
Okay. All right. So point taken. Very quick snap poll of sorts that we did right now with our panel of experts. And thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on the first of NDTV's pre-budget series, looking at what are the top expectations from the finance minister this time around. We were, of course, looking at personal tax. And we'll keep coming back with more on this special series and special broadcast that NDTV is bringing ahead of the budget. For the moment, we'll be heading into a short break. News and updates will continue right here on NDTV.